welcome, Jeff, to the Dating Intentionally podcast, or we can call you Therapy Jeff, your formal name. Sorry. How are
Thank you.
you?
I'm good. I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm great. The first thing I want to know is what is something you want to be intentional about this year, or you are currently being intentional about, like right now?
I've never been like, I'm going to set intentions for the new year kind of guy. I'm like so anti
Pretend it's
it.
not the new year. Like, what do you just want to be more intentional about, if anything?
Okay.
Maybe
It's
you want
so
to be more
hard.
intentional about not being intentional.
Yeah, that's maybe a really good intention to set. It's tricky because as we're recording, it's very close to the new year, just
I
8 days into the new year. So that's like on my mind. But if we're going to take the new year totally out of it, I'd say like try to be a little bit more brave in my creativity. I think that there's like another side or another version of myself that I haven't really shown up with or as like in the content that I create. So I want to show up. I want that version to show up a little bit more often.
Me
Maybe
too.
yeah, a little bit more silly or a little bit more irreverent, or maybe just like not talking about relationships or mental health as much. I think that I've sort of like pigeonholed myself a little bit, and I understand why, but I want to see if I can kind of get out of that a little bit in 2025.
Ooh, I really relate to that struggle as someone who had pigeonholed herself into meal prep previously and I sold my company and started over. So like
Wow.
that's one way to do it. I hope that's not your path because I think you can do that. And I'm surprised to hear you say that because by the way, listeners, if you're not following Jeff, please follow Therapy Jeff at Therapy Jeff. You are very silly, and there are so many things going on in your videos. You reference music from
Mhm.
the early aughts. You have your band T-shirts. You hate camping. That's like a whole facet of your personality, which I'm offended by. But that's okay.
Oh
We can still be
my.
friends. I'm surprised to hear you say that, and yeah, like we want more for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I think, yeah, there's so much more for me to be able to express, but I'm glad that like all of that, all those very authentic things about my personality are coming through. So
For
that's good to
sure,
hear.
for
Mhm.
sure. Okay, so you have like almost 4 million followers, or maybe you do have over 4 million followers across your platforms, and you're a therapist. You have so many like so much feedback coming in from all directions, from clients you work with personally,
Mhm.
from your followers. So, from your point of view, what are the biggest issues of dating and or daters?
You sent me some questions, and this is one of the questions that you sent me, and I spent a while just kind of thinking about it a little bit. I don't think that there's anything that wrong with daters. I think that there's like some things that we can talk about that might be interesting, but I
Yeah.
first want to say like I think we're all doing pretty great. I think that, like, considering everything that's happening, whether it's in the world in general or just like the dating world, I think that us as a generation, as a society, is doing pretty good coping with all of the bullshit. And I think that there's a lot of times like we can kind of like put the blame on specific people or groups of people of just like, oh, they're the worst, they need to do better. But we have to consider where we're at. So maybe you've heard me talk about this before, but like the dating apps are garbage. I think that they suck. And it's so weird that in the modern way of dating is going through the dating apps, and now there's an algorithm attached to our dating life. Like the people that we see in those dating apps are coming up on our feed because of an algorithm. And I don't think there's been any other generation that has had to deal with a fucking algorithm. And
No.
also, like, the apps are so addictive, right? They're just dopamine hits. They're there to like take money from us. They're there to like take advantage of our horny genitals and our desperate hearts. And it's just another way to doom scroll. So I think that when what's wrong with the dating landscape, I think a lot of it has to do with technology. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, look, I met my husband on Hinge, so I am pro app. But I agree with what you're saying, and I think the way I've like reconciled app usage is just like forget the algorithm exists. Like
Hmm.
that's how I've been able to dive into that, and I loved dating apps because it just to me, I'm just very like straight to the point. I definitely met people in person, and I think that's great too, but it's just so much slower, and I'm like, I don't have time for that. So I just like so I think that's why maybe like the apps work for some people, not others,
Sure,
but
sure.
I do agree that technology has caused a lot of issues with dating. Like, yeah, generations before also didn't have ways to instantaneously communicate with each other at all hours of the day
Hmm.
on several different platforms.
Hmm.
Like, and also
Hmm.
be able to like follow each other's digital lives and check on each other's activity. So I remember talking to a guy I met at a ski club who was like 20 years older than me, and he said that if you made plans with the friends in the 90s, you would show up to that place and they just might not show up. And that's just like, that was just life. We don't have that anymore. Now you could be like, well, you watched my story and then your location was here. And like, you
Right.
like this person and you text. It's just like, I think that also adds a layer. And I do agree. Apps are definitely an issue.
There are benefits, there are pros.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to just kinda get straight to the point, and I one thing I like is that you get to ask a whole bunch of questions before you go on a first date if you want, so ask all your deal breaker questions, it's go for
You
it.
can do that even in meeting in person. It's
You
like
could do that too.
yeah. Okay, so going a little deeper though, like specifically about dating apps, technology, what are those issues causing? I guess. Yeah.
I think, I happened to start making content, towards the beginning of pandemic, sort of lockdown days when therapy and mental health was starting to trend. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try to do this. And I just like exploded. I was like very lucky. And also, I deserve
Excuse me, you're
it.
talented. Stop.
Yes, yes. But I think there's been like a real boom in, or, an uptick in emotional intelligence, not just because of mental health creators or podcasts like yours, but we have played a really big part. And so it's made it so that we have maybe higher expectations, and these poor men, oh, the
Mm,
poor men who like are not maybe like as emotionally savvy or intelligent as we would like them to be sometimes, are kind of they're not catching up. And like I told you, I think before we hit record, 90% of my followers are women. So ugh. Like
yeah.
there's like all the men are just not following us. Maybe we can think about that, but also we can blame men. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm hoping we will start to see more creators who make or create advice that speaks more specifically to men, that resonates with men more, so that it's like they have to meet each other halfway. Like men have to seek it out, but also there needs to be
Right.
some creators out there who just like know how to get in the brains of men.
Yes.
It's like it's
Yeah.
a little on us too.
It's totally a
It's
little bit
hard
on
because we're
us.
getting feedback from mostly women, so it's like it's just like a loop, right? And whenever I get a DM from a guy, I'm like, "Oh my god,
Yeah,
a guy
I know.
who listens."
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
very rare that I'll get like, feedback, or if somebody will notice me in person or something and there'll be a guy. But, it's happening. I'm trying to figure out how to like tap into that a little bit more. I think one of the things that kind of is making dating a little tricky is that a lot of people are exploring alternative types of relationships. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's a really good thing. But now it's like we're not mostly all looking for maybe monogamous relationships. There's like all these different styles of non-monogamy and poly and monogamish and anarchy, and just something like a solo poly, or like there's like
Yeah.
casual, whatever, like there's all these different types, so it's harder to find somebody that's going to match. And there's also like some of us, or a lot of us, are getting off the relationship escalator, so we're not doing all the steps like we were told to be doing, which is great. I'm net positive. We love to see it,
Mhm.
but it's making it so that there's maybe less matches out there, I feel like.
It's interesting. It's like less matches, but since you have a more specific idea, it's like, it's kinda like I always relate things back to business. As a business person, it's like if you are speaking to one niche, like they're gonna come find you. They're like that you're that person. So I think it makes it harder, but hopefully it makes it a little bit more efficient because you know who you're saying no to, right? It's like,
Hmm.
"Oh, like, I'm monogamish, you are fully in, I'm gonna have, like, a whole polycule," like, maybe not the quite right fit.
Hmm.
Like, yeah,
Hmm.
I agree, like, that I liked what you said earlier about daters are doing great, we're doing better than we think we are. I love that message because there are so many more new layers to dating and relationships that just haven't really been as out in the open as they are now.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
So I want to talk about having fun in dating. I'm getting a lot of dread, like people who like dread going on dates. They're like, I really want a partner. I really want to be in a relationship, whatever it is, but I just dread this process. So, what is your advice for that person?
First, want to just sort of validate their whole emotional experience. I understand the dread. I understand that it's really difficult out there. There's also, with dating apps and just how we're sort of moving through relationships a little bit quicker now, there's so many more opportunities for rejection. And sometimes it's just like those micro rejections, right? Where you like somebody on Hinge and that's it. That person that you like does not have to get back to you at all. Like, of course, but they don't, and it's a little mini rejection. Or you send somebody a message and they don't get back to you, or you go out on one date and you get ghosted, which
Right.
is sort of like acceptable to a certain degree in our society, but all of these little mini rejections add up and it's really difficult. And sometimes we don't understand the impact that it's having on us, or sometimes we're acutely aware of the impact it's having on us and how difficult dating can be. How do you feel about the mini rejections?
I think when you said acutely aware, I think that's most people who listen to this podcast. Like, yes, they are
Okay.
acutely aware. And to your point earlier about dating apps, like dating apps have created more opportunities for rejection,
Right.
like earlier in the process. So it's like
Yes.
there are now more barriers even to
Yes.
talking to someone if you're using dating apps versus, and there are plenty of barriers. Like there are many rejections in person too. I guess it's hard. Like it's hard. I think as a therapist, how do you suggest people build up tolerance for rejection?
Well, it's tricky because even though there's so much micro and macro ejections, and it's really hard and it hurts, you are naturally building up your resilience as you get rejected.
Even if it feels like shit every time, you're still building up resilience?
It's not a guarantee that you're building up
Okay,
resilience. You might
okay,
just be dying inside little by little by little. That's a real
great.
possibility. But hopefully, you are building up a resilience, and that you know when to like take some time to either get off the apps or stop dating and just hang out with friends. There needs to be lots of different times throughout the, your life or the year or whatever, where you're just kind of chilling and you're not focusing on the dating apps. And then when you feel a little bit more inspired, or like have like a somewhat of an optimistic attitude, then go ahead and get back into the dating apps or asking people out in person, whatever. If I wish that you could just also just kind of like take the pressure off and just focus on vibes and not put so much pressure on a first date or the texting stage or
Right.
how the relationship is developing. Although it's so much easier said than done to just be like, hey, if I'm like talking to my clients, being like, how about it's just vibes today?
And I'm
Instead of,
like, but Jeff, my parents keep asking me when I'm gonna have kids, and I'm
right.
36.
Yes.
What's going on? Yeah, that's the additional layer. It's like, yeah, it'd be so much easier if you didn't have that layer of like, well, what you want, down the line. Like, well, I want a family and I want to do all
Right.
these things, and it's like, but I have to go on vibes and I have to like take a break when I get rejected. No, I need to be pushing through, muscling through. So it's like, I guess what's your advice for like maybe some signals that it's like, okay, this is a time to push through and this is a time to take a break.
I think that if you're gonna be the one who's pushing through, I respect it. I also respect the it's a numbers game. How do you feel about? Do you think that dating is a numbers game? Just like go on as many
I mean,
fucking dates as you
that's a game
can.
I played. That is a game
Yeah.
I played. I had guests come around here and be like, "It's not a numbers game." I've had, people who are like, "Yeah, it is." I mean, I think like with any dating advice, it's like what works for you is gonna work for you, and then that's your
Yeah,
dating, protocol. So for me,
exactly.
I went out with over 60 people in a year. My husband was the 56th person I met. So I was ready to do 100 more.
Do you know who Logan Yuri
Yeah,
is?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. She did like
The
the
secretary,
yeah, yeah, the
yeah,
second
problem.
yeah.
Yeah, that's basically what I did.
Did you? Yeah. I was wondering, I wanted to know like if people put that into practice and they're intentional
But
about
you
that.
need to be a very specific kind of person to do that. Like, that's why I don't say, like, do what I did because I am really resilient. I've been in therapy for years, like
Mhm.
years and years. And I worked with the same therapist for 6 years throughout that whole time.
Nice.
And yeah, not everyone's like that. Not everyone's built emotionally like me. So I know that, and like dating multiple people, like you even said, doesn't work for everyone,
No, it
So,
doesn't. I skew more towards you, where I also am just like, let's go on some dates. When I'm single and I'm interested in meeting somebody, I'm going on 3 dates a week at least sometimes, right? It's just like it's fun, it's cute, it's exciting,
and
and
Portland
there's
has the best food.
oh
I
my
get it.
god, Portland has amazing food.
Yeah.
So even if the date is like a stinker, at least you're having the best meal of your life. It doesn't even matter, right? Sometimes you can go on a date and you feel really anxious, and this works for me and maybe a few other people. So this is good advice for a small percentage, I think. But when you go on a date and you're feeling anxious, it can feel anxiety provoking and there can be a lot of fear that comes up. Or you can be like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. That's actually feeling excited. Like I'm feeling excited and enthusiastic and I don't know what's going to happen. And oh my God, I can't wait. And so I'm really good at sort of shifting the anxiety or the dread
Mhm.
into, wow, what's going to happen? I have no idea. It's kind of like watching my favorite show and binging all the episodes or something. Like I want to know what happens. I also recommend that go ahead and just like ask for your needs to be met like as early as you fucking want, right? Like, I think a lot of people are just like, I don't want to act needy or I don't want to like ask
Mhm.
for all of my like feelings to be validated or whatever. Just fuck it, man. Go for it and ask for it. It's sort of the like, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person kind of
Yes.
deal. Like, let's see what happens here. Just put yourself out there.
Yeah, I think again, like what you're saying is you have this, you know yourself, and so it makes dating a little bit easier. You know, okay, when I feel anxiety, maybe I can shift it. And I think
Hmm.
for people listening, it's like dating is a good way to practice this to figure out what is going to help you kind of get through those micro projections and these weird moments or like, should I ask? It's like on the next time you go on a first date, yeah, you can just play with, hey, you know what, actually, like I really I'm not comfortable sitting this close to you right now. Like,
Yeah,
or some just say,
exactly.
like, who cares? What helped me with that is just thinking it's probably not going to work out anyway, which I know is very pessimistic, but it kind of helped me gain confidence
Hmm.
to just say it.
Yeah, just say it. Just say it and lean into being like cringe or your authentic self or your flawed and imperfect self. Like, go ahead and just be yourself as early as you possibly can on these dates. Allow them to see all of the weird shit about you so that they can decide to leave or stay or whatever. Like, we don't need to draw
Okay.
this out so much.
How would you adjust that advice for the listener who's like, I've never been in a relationship. Like, no one's ever liked me. Like, I've never had any romantic connection. So, being myself clearly means that no one likes me when I'm myself.
Ooh. I want you to be you might not do this, but I want you to be like as brave as you possibly can. If you are continuing to experience rejection after rejection, whether it's like you can't get past the third date or you can't get past the 6-month mark, choose a handful of people that you've dated or been in a relationship with and reach out to them and ask them for honest feedback.
Whoa, scary.
I know. I've done it. I did it one
Really?
time, and it was some of the best feedback that I had ever gotten. It was 3 people that I'd gone on less than 3 dates with
Okay.
total, and it was not getting past the 3rd date. I had no fucking idea what the problem was. And part of it was, I think I think a big part of it actually was like I had a bad picker. I was somehow some way like attracted to women that liked really masculine men. And
Interesting.
I'm not a super masculine guy. Like I'm like kind of slender. I'm emotional and sensitive. So I don't like present as like a typical
Yeah.
bro masculine guy, but I was like going after those women that were more attracted to them. And so I got this feedback of like, you're not big enough, you're not masculine enough, or whatever it is. And I was like, oh, there's nothing I can fucking do about that. Like, I
Wow.
like who I am. And it's interesting that I'm going after this type of person that likes somebody else who's not like me. So check in on your picker, but ask the people that you've recently dated and see if they have any good
What was
feedback.
the
What is,
specific
yeah.
question you asked?
The specific question was, it was something like, I had a really good time with you. I'm not trying to like put you on blast. I'm not trying to make you feel weird. You do not have to respond to this text if you do not want to. But I'm looking for honest feedback about what you thought was like a not a good match for you. So not even like tell me why I'm unattractive or unappealing or something. Just
Yeah,
like,
not a good match.
yeah, why do you think it wasn't a
Okay.
good match? Why do you think there was no romantic spark? Whatever, right? Like, I'm asking that. Do you have feelings about that?
No, just when people say there's no spark, it's like not it's rarely that.
It's rarely that, but it's like it's such a polite way to ask the
Yeah.
question, right? Me telling people like, "Oh, I don't feel in a romantic spark." Like I'm obviously being vague as fuck and not being like totally honest. And I'd rather be not honest with you because I don't know you. But if you're asking for really honest feedback, I'll give you a little bit of honest feedback to see if you can use it and grow.
2 questions.
Sure.
How long after these ended did you send this text? Like a
At
year
least two
after?
months. No,
Like, I'm still thinking about this.
it was a couple
Okay,
months. Yeah.
a couple months, and then were these 3 people you mentioned, did they like ghost you, or they just said, "Hey, it's not. I'm just not interested." Like, did they kind of close the loop there? Like,
They were all the ones that closed the loop. Yeah,
okay, so they
they
didn't
didn't ghost
ghost
me.
you.
No.
So yeah, because I couldn't imagine doing that to someone who ghosted me. But I've had guys ask me for feedback, and usually when I give it to them as nicely as I can, they get mad. But that's whatever. I don't, the rolls off my back. Like,
Yeah, that's
okay,
not your fucking problem.
kind of
And
doubling down on why I ended it
yeah,
at that point.
exactly.
Yeah.
But you are like they might get mad and whatever, but you are kind of like planting a seed.
But the thing about the
Yeah.
feedback thing that I don't love is, well, I guess you got some valuable information about it, but it's like, I don't want people to change themselves or think they need to change something about themselves based on someone who rejected them. Like, you need to see that feedback as like, this is why we weren't a match, not I need to become more masculine so I can attract this type of
Right.
woman. Like, don't
Right.
interpret information that way.
Yes, that's a really good, like, thing to say about this. That's
Yeah.
the danger is that somebody's gonna say, like, "Oh, I don't like these things about you," and then you're like, "I guess I should never be myself ever again." And
Yeah.
I'm all about, like, authenticity and being your authentic self, but there also might be feedback like you chew too loudly, like, "Oh, I could fucking stop that," or you
Yeah.
came on too strong and you're like and it's like, "Oh, I do feel kinda desperate," and so I need to, like, take a beat and not do that. There is feedback that is hard to hear that can be like really honest and you can change it quickly without like changing your authentic self.
Yes. So I want to hear what you have to think about the situation I had on this feedback point. I went out with a guy who wanted to hold my hand the entire time on the table. It was like super. I was like, I'm very like I'm experimental, so I went with it because I'm just like, what is this about? Okay, sure, let's just see what happens. But I'm like trying to eat like French fries, and he's like holding my. It was so weird,
Is
and
this the
he just
first date?
it was a first date, and
Oh, bold.
he just was, like, very into physical touch, which again, like, we were sitting across from each other, so I was like, "Okay, like, whatever, he just wants this is let's just see what happens." Obviously, it's just not for me, so I, like, told him the next day, I'm like, "Hey, I'm not interested," and he's like,
Hmm.
"Why?" And I'm like, I think we just have a misalignment in the physical touch thing, like, it was a little much for me," and he came back with a, "Well, you should have said something because I could have changed that," and I'm, like, thinking, "No, you said you need a lot of physical touch, like, I'm just the wrong person for you."
Hmm.
Like, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. It was not like you had no responsibility to give him that like feedback while it was happening. That would have been weird and awkward. You could have if you felt like
I
it,
could have just
but
taken my hand away.
you could have done that
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But him wanting to hold your hand the whole time, that's excessive.
Yeah. It was
Yeah. So
excessive.
I'm glad that you gave him that feedback. And even though he didn't take it well, he probably internalized it and likely changed
Yeah.
his behavior, right? I
I
hope.
mean, hey, if you're
Yeah.
out there, I don't know. You told me not to talk about it on the podcast, sorry. Okay. So I have some more questions for you.
Hmm.
And this is more of like a therapy question, not like a content
Okay.
social media question, but like,
Got
what
it.
is the difference between having anxiety and being an anxious person and then just having dating anxiety?
Yeah, I think that there's general anxiety, right? And a general anxiety if you're kind of an anxious person is this sort of like persistent feeling of worry, dread, unease that kind of like shows up without a specific cause.
Mm,
Yeah, so there's no cause. It's just sort of coming up. There's like this worry and restlessness, and sometimes there's physical symptoms like fatigue or a fast heartbeat or high blood pressure or something that
mhm,
and those are just sort of like a generalized like experience of anxiety. We also have to kind of take into consideration that the world is like burning down around us, that there's
yeah.
I grew up in Santa Monica and there's all these fires that are having happening in Santa Monica and there's a lot of like or around or Palisades and there's my people are down there and so I'm just going to feel extra anxious today or the political climate or doom scrolling or
Mhm.
whatever. So there's like general anxiety that we can feel. There's a bunch of things that we can feel anxious about when it comes to just living in this world in this time. But then there's dating anxiety, and that's sort of a different thing that can happen on top of our general anxiety,
Fun.
which is so much fun. But dating anxiety is a reaction to something that's like specifically happening. So there's a specific cause. The general anxiety was like, there isn't a specific cause. Dating anxiety, there is a specific cause because there's so much uncertainty. We have no idea what's going to happen when we're like dating. There's anxiety that's caused by the apps, probably. There's also kind of like just normal fears of like, oh my God, I'm going to take all my clothes off maybe with this person and do sex together. And oh, that's really
Yeah.
anxiety
Right, just
provoking.
yeah, intimacy in general.
Exactly. Intimacy, all of your flaws and imperfections are eventually going to come flooding out. You're going to be judged by the other person, probably. There's relationship issues that are going to get triggered. And whether it's happening now or it may actually happen, that's where the anxiety is coming from with dating
Right.
anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting distinction because I think, like, a lot of people have dating anxiety. It's like, "Oh my god, am I just, like, a really anxious person?" It's like, no. Dating, it just is anxiety inducing for all the
Yes.
reasons you just mentioned, and, like, you're
Yes.
okay if you feel anxious about dating. I don't think there's one person who doesn't, and if you do, you're probably a psychopath.
You probably
Yeah,
are.
yeah, if you don't have any anxiety about, like, getting close to someone or, like, I don't know, is the one unicorn who had, like, a perfect childhood and, like, is completely secure and just doesn't have any fears about anything?
There
I
might
don't
be that
think
person. Fuck that person. They're so
probably
boring.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
Uh, I think that I have very on the spectrum of date anxiety, I have very little dating anxiety. I used to have a ton, and then I did a lot of work, and now I have very little. And I think it's really fun. I think the not knowing what's going to happen is really exciting. I think that I love connecting with people, even if it's only on one date. All that being said, I still have plenty of freakouts. Like you said, it's a really normal experience to have anxiety when you're dating.
how much do we need to address our dating anxiety to get into the relationship we want? Like, do you think it's like we can completely just ignore it and just muscle through? Or do you think it's worth like actually working on like untangling the anxiety in the process of finding a partner?
I think that you can muscle through it to a certain degree. It's the same sort of question I might have for you if you're in a relationship and your partner does something that's annoying as fuck or a little like upsetting to you, if you can just like let it roll off your back without resenting them, without punishing them, without avoiding them, without trying to get them back in some sort of way, if you can just really let it go, then fucking let it go, babe.
Mhm. Okay.
Same thing for anxiety. If you can just sort of tolerate it and it's not affecting how you show up in the date and it's not like driving you crazy and it's not having a weird impact on your partner, whatever, then okay, then just muscle through it. But if it starts to get in the way and creates bad dates or awkward times or somebody's like really feeling it and they start to feel anxious themselves, you probably need to address it. And it doesn't mean that you have to go to therapy. You just might need to be
Right.
more mindful. Yeah.
Okay. So being more mindful looks like
Being more
I'm not
mindful
gonna let you off
means
the hook here.
okay. It means like being really thoughtful. Like, okay,
Okay.
what is causing this anxiety? Are there coping mechanisms and tools that I can do? Do I need to breathe more? Do I need to not go on as many dates? Do I need to have ways to calm myself down when I'm on a date? Like, I have ways to feel less anxious on a date. Usually, I get like a really cold drink and I hold it in the palm of my hand because it lowers my like body temperature. Or I'll go to the fucking bathroom or I'll step outside because it's always cold in Portland, unless it's those 3 months
Right.
that it's not cold in Portland. So come up with ways to manage your anxiety. If you can't quite figure out like what's going on or how to manage it, maybe go to therapy or read a book or listen to podcasts or look at content and do something about it.
I agree. I love this, like, idea of having a toolbox of, like, the cold drink, walk outside, go to the bathroom, take a deep breath,
Hmm.
whatever it is, like, ground your feet. I'm trying to
Hmm.
think I don't I think for me, my, like, little calm down trick was just to shut up. Like, I just needed to stop talking and just be like, "You know what, Talia, like, just let them
Hmm.
do it."
Hmm.
Like, you're
I think
doing too
that's a really
much.
good, yeah, it's a really good trick. You're trying way too hard. And a lot of times you feel anxiety when you start to get performative. So if you can just step back, let them take the reins or
Yeah.
just be your authentic self, whatever, then it's a lot easier.
Yeah, and also what you said earlier about you used to have anxiety and then you kinda it's less now. Do you think that's just through practice and experience or more the work you've done on yourself or both?
Yeah, all of the above. I think, the more dates I went on, the less anxious I got. The more like that I worked on my self-esteem and self-worth, the better it got. The less pressure that I put on all the dates, the better it got. I think I was also kind of I used to put pressure on a first date. I also used to think about like, is there going to be a kiss at the end of the first date? And I'm just like, who the fuck cares? Right? We're
Yeah,
just hanging
right.
out. It's just vibes. We're having like nice coffee, a drink, or good food, and it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. And so going into a date being like nothing matters is really soothing for me.
Yes, I love it. Just like let's just see how this date interaction goes. And
Hmm.
yeah, letting go of all expectation definitely is something I talk about a lot on the show. Just like let go. I
Hmm.
remember my therapist told me like, that my expectations will disappoint me, and that like changed my life. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
that's why I feel disappointed and resentful all the time,
for
pretty
sure.
much. Yeah. Okay. Your videos are amazing. And you recently shared the most popular videos from last year. And the number one video you listed was the 10 questions to reflect on to figure out whether they're your forever person. And I love this advice. I love the questions. Question about your content though. Why do you think people were so obsessed with questions?
Oh, yeah. Good
Why?
question. God, I don't know if I've ever really thought about that. I mean, as a therapist, I'm trained to ask questions, right? Like we're not therapists aren't really supposed to give advice or tell their clients what to do. We're just supposed to ask them questions so that they can discover what they really want to do and then we just sort of support them on that journey kind of thing. I mean, they are leading questions for sure. But I'm here just to ask questions. So I was sort of trained to be someone who asks a lot of questions. And I think that, you know, a lot of questions can bring lots of different types of insight. You can spend whole journal entries on one question. I think it's really exciting to ask your partner or ask a friend all these different like intimate questions because you have like all these wonderful lovely conversations with people. So I think it's just sort of planting a seed and then having a really fun conversation and getting insight into who you really are.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. What I love about your Instagram and also just like the question cards, just like there's so many questions you can ask. There's just like an infinite amount, and it's hard
Mhm.
to come up with them on your own sometimes. So
Yeah,
just having like you're an
true.
amazing resource. Have any of your followers like do they come to you and are like, oh my god, I used this set of questions and it like was huge or like
Oh,
something
yeah.
like
I get that
yeah,
feedback all the time. Yeah, I love it.
awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't my most popular post from last year was 10 questions to ask before marriage. So and
Wow.
that was, like, the week I got married, which maybe helped. But, like but but, yeah, that one went completely viral, and it was
It
very
yeah,
one of
it's
those
those ones go viral, like questions asked before you get married, or questions to ask before you move in, or questions to ask before you define the relationship. Yeah, like those are all good
yeah.
ones.
So, okay, in this video that you talk about, like, things to figure out if you wanna know that you're a forever person, but when do you start sleuthing that stuff out? Like, and when you're in that dating phase?
I would go through those questions, and some of those questions are like, what's the
One of
most
the first ones is
yeah.
like, what annoys you about them, and can you handle that forever? Which is a
Yeah.
great question.
If they never change that annoying fucking behavior or annoying thing that they say, can you be with them forever? It's one of my favorite questions. I think that you should ask these questions to yourself every 6 months for the rest of your life that you're in the relationship. It's not just like, I'm in love and I think I might want them to be my forever person. Like, because you are together and you're probably going to change and you're going to evolve, whether it's them or whether it's you. And this is just sort of like a nice little private check in that you can do, or a check in that you can do with your sweetie.
Okay. Yeah. I guess it's like in the first 3 dates, it's like more of the vibe check. But then after you as you like get more into the, getting to know them, I feel like some of us may make the mistake of starting to figure out stuff too soon. Or they
Mhm.
like trying to make a snap judgment based on like one thing they said or did. And my whole
Mhm.
thing is like you need to give it time to figure out what their annoying thing is. And is that even the most annoying thing they do? Like
Totally. Yeah, really good point.
I got a question from a listener that I love to hear your take on, which is like related. 3 months in, I don't feel excited to continue, but nothing is wrong. What should I do?
It's the like nothing's wrong on paper sort of thing, or I can't like
That's how you interpret
pinpoint.
that? Okay.
Yeah, how do you interpret that? Because I don't know
I
if I'm
interp
interpreting it
I
right.
interpret it as like that we were saying earlier, like the missing spark, or
Right.
I think I also think a lot of women, it's like, "I don't feel like he's sweeping me off my feet. I don't feel like so like I'm longing for them." And in my head, I'm just like, "That why do you wanna feel like you're constantly yearning? That doesn't feel regulated." Like, that's not
Totally.
like a peaceful state of being. So,
Right.
but yeah, that's how I interpret it.
It's hard because like this question, this person could be like in a the most secure relationship of their life and that's what they wanted. And there's sometimes we have to ask ourselves this question of, do I want harmony and balance or do I want chaos and excitement?
It's okay if
um,
you want excitement and chaos.
yeah, either one is fine. I'm making it a little binary, but it's a common question that we have to kind of grapple with. And maybe this person was like, I want harmony and balance, and now I have it, and I'm lacking that whatever chemistry, but
Yeah.
it's probably like the red flag chemistry that you don't actually want, which is like chaos, unpredictability, uncertainty. I have no idea when I'm going to see them again. The sex is great, but that's only because like, is this the last time I'm ever going to have sex with them? I don't know. Like, so you might be missing some of that. On the other side, though, like there does need to be some fucking spark. There's green flag chemistry, which is our values are really aligned. We have similar senses of humor. We push each other outside our comfort zone, and we feel really supported. I'm growing in really positive ways. I'm learning new things about myself and about them. I'm doing more novel and adventurous things in
Mhm.
this relationship, and that's really sparky. But if that's not even there, then what the fuck is going on here? I have no idea. So I'm not really answering this question.
No, I know. No, but these are good things to think about, and,
Okay.
my like, following that thread, I guess, do you feel like all the things you just mentioned, do they have to be there organically, or do you manufacture it? Like, because 'cause I've been in relationships where I was more on the escalator, and
Mhm,
I remember, like, really kind of forcing some of the stuff you just mentioned, like, "Oh, we need to be doing activities. Like, we need to be
mhm,
doing these things." And I think I don't know if my partner was really, like, along for the ride, but he just kind of went with
mhm,
it. So, I
mhm.
guess at what point is it like you're trying to create that spark and you're just, like, really doing it, or should it just be there?
If I have to answer this really succinctly, I think it just needs to be there at the start. And
Okay.
then once the honeymoon starts to fade a bit, then you need to be more deliberate about it. But if it's too far over on this end of the
Yeah.
spectrum where you're like really trying your hardest to make this fucking relationship work, that's a bad sign.
Yeah, yeah. So, let's talk a little bit about after that define the relationship stage, which is, like, really hard to get to. Like, if you're listening and you are stuck in that early dating phase, I have a lot of episodes on that, but I wanna get into more, like, after you're both committed, 2 feet in, it's new, it's lovely, you have that new relationship energy.
When do you think it typically happens?
I don't like to put a timeline on it, but I
Do it. Do
typically
it.
it's like 2 to 3 months. If I'm monogamous, if I'm seeing one person consistently for 3 months, like, once a week, and at that 90-day mark, I'm like, "Where is this going?" Then I don't like that. I wanna know. Yeah.
Fair. Totally
Yeah.
fair.
What about you?
Oh, how long into it? I think I like to sort of define the relationship twice, where I
Mm.
first might define the relationship a month into it, not being like, I'm not trying to lock anybody down, but what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
Where are we headed? And then eventually, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 months into it at the most, I'll define the relationship as in like, let's name this. What is
Yeah.
going on? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like for me, people don't like the exclusivity thing, but that's how I did it with my husband. It's like, okay, we were exclusive after like a month because I just wasn't interested in seeing anyone else. Remember my last first date was horrible, and I'm like,
Mhm,
I'm over it. And
mhm.
then a month later, he was like, asking me to be his girlfriend. And I like said no a few times, but because I'm avoidant, and
Nice.
that's how that happened. And I
Mhm.
think it's hard to be patient though in this whole process. Like you said, the uncertainty is just it drives us nuts.
It does, yeah. You have to tolerate a certain amount of uncertainty, and that's one of the most difficult parts of dating. It's tricky. So you're looking for more certainty, right? After you define the relationship. So there's kind of sometimes there's this burst of dopamine, or there's like this feeling of relief, or you get to feel like you're settling into the relationship a little bit, or you have your labels if that's what you're looking for. But there's still like, instead of just basking in the glow of defining the relationship, there's still really important questions that need to be asked. And I jotted down 7 of
Oh
them.
yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. One, are there any aspects of our relationship that you would like to keep completely private from others? Because we all have like really different needs for privacy. I'm more of a open book. And so I want to try to find somebody who's like at least more of an open book, but I know that I'm an extreme open book and that I'm probably not
Yep.
going to find somebody like me, and that's okay. But when there are privacy breaches, that is one of like the top 3 things that brings couples into couples counseling with me. Is there's like, oh my God, I can't believe you shared this with your friend or with your family or on a podcast. So Really big
Yeah,
question. Do you feel like
right.
you know in your relationship
Oh,
what needs to be
yeah.
kept private?
I told him right away, I'm like, "I'm a public person. If you're in a relationship with
Yeah,
me, you're gonna be talked about publicly." And I check with him often about even things we with our friends, we have a very close friend group, like, "Can I tell this mutual friend we see every week about this?" Like, I check with him. Yeah.
good.
He
Yeah.
doesn't say anything because he's a guy. He's
Yeah, yeah. I got it. Number 2 is how do you define cheating, right? Because some people are
Love
like,
this question.
if you're flirting with a barista, that is cheating. If you're liking hot babes on Instagram, that is cheating. If
If
you're
you're making
watching
AI
porn.
nudes of other people, like from your last podcast.
Oh, that is
Last
a reference
podcast.
to my last podcast. I got a email about that very specific part, which was good feedback, and I felt a little bad. So I'm gonna correct myself on your
Oh,
podcast.
I'm ready.
Uh, so it is a thing. It's starting to become a thing of like people making AI nudes where they like take a face and then apply this like fake artificial body to it. I got feedback on the podcast being like, this is going on and it's very upsetting because the person that you're making an AI nude of is not consenting to it. And that's very fucked up. And you should have mentioned that in the podcast. And
Okay, thank you
they're
for
right.
mentioning it here.
I'm mentioning it
And
here.
by the way, for the record, I think that's cheating.
Oh, do you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. It's such a weird new thing. Tell me more about why it feels like cheating to you.
Okay, because well, first of all, I'm like, who are you generating? That is a very important piece of this. Okay. Like if
Good
I'm in a
question.
monogamous relationship, who are you generating? Is it me or is it like is it someone else? Also, like what like for me, I think porn is fine. Maybe people like specific people and there's OnlyFans, but it's like you're like actively creating this scenario, but I don't know. It's just like
It's still like generally it feels like it's not okay.
yeah.
Uh, but there are different levels of not
Yeah.
okayness.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we need to make sure we have to this the discussion of what is cheating.
What is cheating?
Is making AI nudes cheating? So it's a sub question.
Right. And number 3, how do you want me to break up with you? So
Okay.
this is kind of like you've just defined the relationship. You're probably feeling all gooey and warm and sweet. And the how do you want me to break up with you feels like a real vibe shift. But I think it's a
Whoa.
good
I'm like,
question. Yeah, I
I've
know
never even considered this topic. Okay.
you should ask your partner about it. So I have a very specific way that I want you to break up with me. I want you to first do it over text and then ask me if I want to continue texting you or talking to you on the phone or doing a FaceTime or seeing you in person. I want you to do it on a Friday so that I have the weekend to recover as much as I possibly can. I want you to be really direct about it. I want you to kind of to be like as compassionate as you possibly can. And there's like a few other things. So
Wow.
you do not have to do this. You can break up with me however your heart really desires. However, I'm going to give you a blueprint just in case you need one.
That's such a
Uh,
good question, but definitely a hard question.
it's a hard one. Do you have
Yeah.
an ideal way that you would be broken up with?
I hate admitting this, but I've never been broken up with.
Oh my God.
I I don't think I care. I guess like not like I'm ready for anything.
You
I
don't
really
care
don't
what
care.
day someone breaks up with you on? It
No.
doesn't
I
matter?
work you know what? Because I mean, I work for myself. I can make any day the weekend. Like you could break up with me and I could have my bags packed on my way to Italy that night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
having that flexibility, but I get the weekend thing. When I broke up with my ex of 6 years, I waited till a long weekend.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's just considerate. Number 4, will you feel hurt if I start watching a brand new TV show series without you? Do I need to check in with you on that kind of shit? It may sound silly, but it's also symbolic. Like, are we going to do
Yeah.
these things without checking in with each other, or do we always check in first? There's no right or wrong answer, but hopefully you can agree on something.
Love that.
Yes. Number 5, when we order food, should I assume that we are sharing the food and that I can eat whatever the fuck is on your plate and you can, or is it just like separate and we're not fucking around here?
Don't you think this would come up more earlier in dating if you're eating together?
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. But
So
I like that. I
naturally,
like the clarification of it. Yeah.
yes. How much time should we plan to spend together on average? So does our like do we start hanging out even more now? Are we having like designated days that are special date days? If I hang out with my buddies on Saturday night, are you going to be bummed about it? Should we do you want me to invite you? Is it going to be a whole group hang? Like, what's going on here? I think that our expectations change once we define the relationship, right?
Yeah, I love that so much. I mean, I just was thinking of someone who DM'd me last week was like, "I'm in a new relationship with someone amazing, like, thanks to your advice, but, like, now what? And what do we
Hmm.
do? What do I do?" And it's like, that's the question that would need to
Hmm.
be asked in that situation.
Yeah, yeah. Last question, and this is also like, hopefully this never happens. And don't ask this fucking question if it's
Okay.
too shitty. Uh, If I ever cheated on you just once and you wanted me to like, how would you want me to handle that? Do you want me to like automatically bring that to you, tell you what's up? Do you want me to just handle it on my own, make sure it never happens again so that you never find out? Like what's the plan here?
Mhm.
What would
I
like be the
love
best
this
way?
conversation. I think it's
Do
a
you?
really, really yes. I
Mhm.
mean, I've talked about this with my husband at length, and I'm like, "If you wanna cheat on me, just fucking tell me first." Like, I will be chill with it. Like, and because I'm like, "Why don't you just involve me?" Like, why do you have to do it behind my back? I'm very open-minded. Like, I definitely have explored non-monogamy in the past. I'm just like, "If you wanna go explore with someone else, like, by all means, but don't plan a trip with them." That's to me
Mm,
is where the line is. Like, don't,
mhm,
like, go on vacation with them.
mhm,
But, like,
mhm.
if you wanna go have a date, fine,
What
you
if
know?
like something happens that might upset you? I don't know if this would actually upset
Yeah.
you, but like what if like your partner's ex
Mhm.
texts them and they're like, "I want to get back together. Can we do this?" Like he can handle that privately and be like, "No,
Yeah.
babe, that's not going to happen." Or would you want him to tell you about that even though it might be hard to hear?
Like, I'm very resilient, so I'll be like, "Yeah, tell me everything," but I get why having these conversations is really important because you need to understand this stuff about your partner. Like, you need
Mhm.
to like, they're not you. Like, my husband is very different. Like, he might not wanna know if my ex ever came back to me, just being
Mhm.
like, "Please, like, let me get you back," you know? Yeah, like, we haven't talked about that. Now I'm gonna go when he gets home from his trip, be like, "Babe,
Here's one
if this
last
happened."
question that's related. Would you want like, do you want to know everybody your partner has hooked up with that still hangs out? So, like, do you wanna know all the
Mm.
friends that they've hooked up with, or do you not want that fucking information?
I mean, that is a situation I'm in, and, like, I know.
And does that feel
So
good that you know,
it's
or would you rather
fine.
not
No,
know?
it's fine. This comes up a lot too with my listeners. It's like, he's still friends with someone that they had sex like 10 years ago or something. It's like, you need to trust that if a person is with you, they are fully with you until they are showing you actual signs, like legitimate signs that they're not. That's in
Mhm,
your head. That's a story. Like if they're
mhm.
saying, hey, trust me, I don't have feelings towards them anymore. That's in the past. Like you need to take that at face value. Like
Agree.
that's a you issue at that point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Uh-huh.
But I think it's also okay to voice those concerns. Like, I don't believe in telling people to cut out friendships.
Yeah, I don't like
Yeah,
that at all. Yeah, it feels icky.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think, again, these are wonderful things to explore. I hope if you're listening that you're well, maybe in the show notes, you could if you can send them to me, I could put them in the
Sure,
show notes so that,
totally.
people can grab the questions, and Jeff, this has been so fun. I feel like I could talk to you forever. My last question for you is, what do you wanna see more of in dating?
The first thing that came up for me is, and we've sort of touched on it a little, I guess, is intentionality. I think that a lot of people are just going out and dating. Like it kind of makes sense, right? Because we're talking about a numbers game. But think about like what you're wanting, what you need from your partner. Sure, go on a first date and have it be vibes, but then like start to try to figure out what the fuck is going on here. There's so many people that are getting like caught up in situationships that like if you're looking for that, then I love that for you. We used to call them casual relationships. Do it, be deliberate about it. But I feel like there's so many situationships that develop because there's just no questions are asked. It's too scary to like define what the fuck is going on here. So be intentional and then be in alignment with that intention.
I wanna see more of that too. That's why I have my podcast called Dating Intentionally. It's like, I don't care what you want, just know what you want and make sure you're aligning with that, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
Yeah, amazing. Well, where can we get more therapy, Jeff?
Yeah, Therapy Jeff is on TikTok and Instagram. I hope to start making more long form content on YouTube, so you can start subscribing to me there. And therapyjeff.com if you want any
Yeah,
updates. I'm also on Threads. I don't know why. I'm posting on Threads, so you can follow
I
me
love
there if you
threads.
want. Yeah.
Awesome, well, thank you so much. This has been so fun.
Yeah, it's been fun too. Thanks.